Hey Kipsters, it's Miss P. I am so excited to film this video for you today. I know a lot of you have been locked at home and probably trying to look for something to do. So I'm hoping you're getting to enjoy this time with your family, but I've been spending a lot of free time outside. Even though, I can't go to the playground and I can't really go to the beach because it's too cold, I've been spending a lot of time outside walking, and I've been walking my dog. I wanted to show you something really cool that I found the other morning when we were walking. Ready? I found this. Now, I'm wondering if you know what it is. When I first saw it, it took me a minute to figure out what it was, but I think you could probably guess what this object might be. But before you guess, I want to use my observations to try to get more information about my mystery object. So when I look at it, I notice that it's a circle. I notice that it has lots of little holes inside. It looks maybe like it broke off of something way bigger. And I'm also going to use my sense of smell, because when I smell it, I thought it would smell like grass or dirt or something else kind of like weird and crusty outside because I found it on the ground. But it smells sweet, sort of like candy or a candle. It doesn't smell the way that I expected it to smell. So I want you to think, what might that mystery object be? If you have an idea, you can lock it in, or you can tell a family member if they're sitting right next to you. Okay, so I've made a lot of observations. I have an idea of what it is, and I'm going to come to the conclusion that the piece of thing that I found on the ground is a part of a beehive. Now, you might think to yourself, Miss P, you can't touch a beehive. But I know that this beehive is safe. I've been keeping it in a container for a couple of days until I was ready to film my video. Gone now. And I made sure that there was nothing living inside of it before I took it home with me. So I know that it's safe for me to touch. And I'm really excited that I got to show it to you. So when I got this idea for filming videos, I had to think, beehives are really cool, but they're not my favorite thing about bees. And I thought, why not do this whole video all about bees? But not about their hives, even though they're really interestingly built and they're cool and they have hexagons and different shapes. I love beehives and there's a lot to talk about them, but I want to talk about specifically the bees because it's almost spring and there are going to be lots of bees coming out any minute. My favorite thing about our favorite buzzing insect is that they help plants to grow and make new seeds. I bet you've never really thought about what a bee is doing day to day when it's flying around. Yeah, maybe they're out checking out some flowers, but why? Why are these bees looking at flowers? Now, when it's spring and summer, we see bees all the time, and that's because that's when the flowers are out. And the flowers are an important part of how bees actually get their food. Now, you may look at your parents and think, they must know everything about science. But there are some misconceptions or myths or stories that people have heard about bees, and it's completely wrong. So I want to talk about two myths, two misconceptions, things that people think are true about bees, but are not really. The first thing is that, yes, bees do get their food from flowers, but they're not eating the flowers. They're not going home and eating a flower like a piece of celery. Instead, they're using those flowers for a different way to get food. The other myth that a lot of people think is that bees are collecting honey from the flowers. There's no honey inside of flowers. The last time I checked, Winnie the Pooh wasn't trying to reach into a flower and get the honey that way. They went into the beehive to get the honey. When bees are flying from flower to flower, they're not collecting honey. They have to make that back in their hive. When bees visit flowers, they're drinking nectar. Say nectar. Nectar is a gooey, liquidy substance that lives at the bottom of a flower. So if you think of a flower like this, and here are all my petals up at the top, down by my elbows, there's a little pool of nectar. And our bees stick their proboscis, stick their nose all the way down, and they suck up that nectar. But remember, it's not up by the petals, it's down at the bottom of our flower. Usually if you go to the grocery store and you get flowers, or you pick flowers and you bring them home, by the time you get home that nectar is dried up, so you don't often get to see it. But our bees are really good at finding that nectar because it's how they eat. It's also how they make honey. So when a bee is visiting a flower, it's like visiting the grocery store for them. They go in, they grab some nectar, and they're able to take it back to their hive. Now, there's a second thing that happens when bees visit a flower. they're not just sucking up nectar, but their little fuzzy bodies are also picking up something called pollen. Say pollen. Pollen is a yellowy powder and it gets stuck to them. Now this pollen is super important for flowers. The bees don't really care all that much about it. They don't really probably even know that they're collecting this pollen. But pollen is essential. It is super important for our flowers in order for them to survive. If those flowers didn't get pollen from lots of other flowers, they wouldn't be able to make new seeds. So when a bee visits a flower, they collect some pollen and they fly it over to another flower and they leave some pollen there, and they collect some new pollen and they fly it over and they collect some pollen and they leave some pollen over there. And every bee visits a flower, they collect the pollen, and then they drop that pollen off at other places. This is called cross-pollination. Say cross-pollination. Perfect. Cross-pollination is when pollen gets from flower to flower to flower because it hitches a ride on a bee or some other kind of bug like a butterfly, maybe even a hummingbird. Now that we know that bees are super helpful at getting pollen from flower to flower, and that flower uses that pollen to make new seeds, we know that everyone is happy. It's a relationship that makes everybody, the bees and the flowers, happy so that they can all do what they need to do to grow and survive. And I came up with an activity for us to do related to flowers and related to bees. You're going to need a lot of material. So the first thing you need to do is get a grown-up. The grown-up is who's going to help you make sure that you have all the materials you need, just like I have set up in front of me right now. Now, I cut out flowers in different colored paper. You can use white and decorate them yourself. And you're going to need some kind of powder to represent your pollen. So first you need to get your flowers and cut them out. Then you need to get your powder and add pollen. I'm using just a little bit of flour that I use to make banana bread, and I'm putting it right in the middle of my flowers. But I'm going to leave one flower empty. We're going to see what happens with that flower. So I have a few flowers cut out of paper. I have my pollen powder, and I made myself some bees. I'm using 4 Q-tips as my bees, and I made them striped because I think that that's more fun. I used a yellow highlighter and a black marker to make my bees striped. I also have my piece of beehive right over here just in case I need it. So, first things first, I need flowers, I need pollen, and I need a bee. And my bee is going to fly in and it's going to visit my flower. And then it's going to fly along and maybe it's going to visit this flower. And now I've made a pollen mixture. I had some pollen from this flower and some pollen from this flower. And then maybe my bee is going to fly over here and it's going to get some nectar from this flower. Oh, and it left behind some pollen. And then it's going to keep going and it's going to collect some pollen. And then it's going to fly over here. Oh, and it dropped more. And then maybe it's going to fly back to the hive. And my next bee is going to come in and it's going to visit this flower first and collect a whole bunch of pollen. And then it's going to fly over here and collect some of this pollen and maybe leave some behind and then fly over here. You get the point. And then it flies home to its hive. This is something you can do with your family at home. You can each be a different bee and fly around and you can see which flowers get the most pollen spread. I used flour. You could use glitter. You could use cornstarch. You could use baby powder. You can pretty much use anything you want, or you could have one flower that has glitter in it. You could have one flower that has baby powder in it, so you can really see that those flower mixtures are spreading all around and swishing around all the flowers. You're being a cross-pollinator. You're helping the flowers to get more pollen so that they can make more seeds, so that we can grow more flowers for more bees to eat. They can get more nectar from more flowers. Being a cross-pollinator is not an easy job, and you have all the tools here and in your brain now that you can take some simple tools from at home and make your own garden and help those bees to cross-pollinate and make new flowers. Go ahead, give it a try with your family. Have fun, make a mess. You know how Miss P loves a mess. If you need any help, you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to your classroom teacher. They can help you too. Keep your eye open for next week when we do another really fun science activity and learn even more about animals and maybe another surprise. Talk to you soon. Have a great week. Bye.